Welcome one and all to Cyclone InCYders. I'm Taylor Mankle here, joined by Hawn, Wong, and Mary Rominger here to walk through some Iowa State athletics this week and last. So to start things off, we're going to kick it off with a little men's basketball talk here. Obviously, we've had a couple big games, couple big events happen since the last time we met and talked about, obviously, Iowa State men's basketball. First being that we're going to talk about is Iowa State winning over Oklahoma at home, a good victory. Every Big 12 victory is a good victory this year, seemingly. They won that game 80-64 to get the season sweep over Oklahoma. How were they able to do it, Mary?
They were able to do it because they were carried by one man offensively. They had a pretty good, consistent effort throughout the lineup, but they had one man, and that was Long, who had an overwhelming amount of points, 23 to be exact, and he really was able to lift the Cyclones over. And they did have a couple troubles during the game, but he was able to stay consistent and push them over.
And Hawn, obviously, it was more of a second-half effort that put the Cyclones over the top in this game. What was it in that second half that separated them from the Sooners?
Yeah, as Mary was talking about, they had a little bit of struggles there in the first half, but really in the second half you saw Montemores. He's always careful with the ball, first and foremost. Yeah. 0 turnovers in this game. Even the past, I think, 5 games, he's had 1 turnover in those last 5. So while Montemores always take care of the ball, it was especially efficient in that second half, being able to pass the ball out to either Naz or Matt, even Burton, who hit a few, although he didn't have the most efficient of the night, I think 4 for 10 around there. But it was definitely Naz Long at the helm of that win, but Montemores really being the floor general as he is, dishing out the correct passes at the right time.
Yeah, and obviously a big headline in this game was Solomon Young getting the first start of his career. Steve Prohm in his press conference on Monday noted that just when he walked in for the week after the Texas game, he decided on his own that Solomon Young is starting. He's shown him enough in this season. Do you think this was a good move by Prohm? And if so, how did he perform in his first ever start, Mary?
I think it was definitely a good move. It was nice to see the adversity and, well, not adversity, but it was nice to see the different types of lineups that the Cyclones can have. Solomon Young had, I think, a stellar performance. He came out with this hustle that really got the crowd going.
For sure.
He had a couple big blocks, a couple big rebounds that really set the momentum and got the Cyclones going. And I think for this being his first start ever, as a freshman, he really showed that he is capable of doing great things in the future. So I think it was a great move by Prohm, and Young really stepped up and showed Prohm that he made a good decision there.
And Hawn, what are your thoughts on Solomon's first start as a Cyclone?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to Solomon Young on his first start. Played a fantastic game, really a lot of effort put forth by him. But I really want to shout out to the rest of the team as well. Congratulations on them on being able to adapt so well to Solomon Young being in the lineup. Iowa State being already past, I'd say, halfway through the season.
For sure, yeah.
To have a lineup change that deep in the season, especially when you're still in contention for a decent seed in the Big 12 tournament and even in March. Just adapting to that situation, having a new starter, especially at the 5 that Prohm is playing kind of the main big man on the floor. When you're talking about defensive rotations, help assignments, it's really a good sight to see these Cyclones adapt so well to someone, I guess, so new to the lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see a freshman really contributing some big minutes and some big numbers, even not necessarily in the point department, but he's been really a good body down low for some good rebounds that Iowa State needs in Big 12 play. But a big thing that was really highlighted, you mentioned it, Hawn, is the three-point shooting of Iowa State here recently. Why do you think it's finally they're just making more now, or do you think they're making a conceited effort to go out and shoot more three-pointers in these recent games?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little of both. We talked about it there halfway through the season. Naz Long coming off the injury, we kind of expected, as Iowa State fans, he might not jump out the gate scoring as many points as we thought he would, but he has chipped in his fair share of points. And even Matt Thomas just recording his 1,000th career point. He's had some really solid games. He's actually hit a three-pointer in every game but I think 2 this season, and that just goes to show the consistency in not only Matt Thomas and the players, but in Prohm's game plan. Spread the floor, whether it's Burton out wide as well, Montemorris driving, kicking. That game plan really facilitates three-point shooting and a big number of them.
Yeah, and a great thing about what Matt Thomas has been doing, of course, recently, is he's doing it with the bone spurs in his foot. So, Mary, what do you think about the current very good three-point shooting of this Iowa State team?
I want to touch a little bit on who you just talked about right now, Matt Thomas. He had mentioned in a press conference that he had been specifically focusing on that aspect of his game, and it definitely showed. And you saw when Iowa State was hitting those threes against Oklahoma, they were that's what really gave them the lead at the beginning of the game and in the second half. But it's when they stopped making those threes and their offensive game kind of fell and they fell a little flat is when they started to struggle. So that shows you right there how important getting those points beyond the arc is.
Yeah, I mean, good three-pointing can basically change an entire game. You look at the box score, Iowa State got blown out in the rebounds, basically. 47, Oklahoma had 47, Iowa State's 32. You rarely win games when that is the rebounding margin, but Iowa State able to shoot 46.2% from behind the arc in that game, was able to have them win 80-64. That's the difference that can make, and I think Iowa State is making that conceited effort to add that, continue to add to that part of their game. And I like what you said, Hawn, where their scheme really allows for a lot of that, especially with the great facilitator in Montemorris, a Naismith Trophy top 30 contender. So let's move forward into the game upcoming, Iowa State going to K-State, the Octagon of Doom, to face off against the Wildcats. Can Iowa State get a little streak going here in the Big 12 play towards the end of the season to get things on the right foot getting into the Big 12 tournament, Mary?
I sure hope they can. I mean, they have the capability of doing so like they showed against Oklahoma, but they have been really up and down, and I know that has a lot to do with the type of competition that they've had, but they need to find some type of consistency, and if they're able to do so on the road and get this win against K-State, then they can go on a little streak here towards the near end of the season like you mentioned. So it'll be important that they do so, and I think they're capable of doing so. It's just a matter of playing a complete game from everyone.
So Mary says it's capable, Hawn. How do they do it?
They do it, I think, on the backs of Montemorris. We talked about him all season. We talked about him especially today. Quickly here, a tweet from Alex Gukin, if you guys know him, Iowa State sports reporter here. He tweeted a really fun fact I just want everyone, Iowa State fan or not, to just know about Montemorris. If he were to go through these next 10 games, averaging 0 assists and 10 turnovers through those 10 games, he would still be able to beat the top mark in the NCAA career-wise for assist-to-turnover ratio, which I think was set in 2000 by Cardell Johnson of UAB. It was set at 3.15 career assist-to-turnover ratio. Montemorris is currently at 4.7. And if that number doesn't just shock you in the best way possible. As an Iowa State fan, it gets me excited. As a fan of basketball and just kind of good, solid fundamentals.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing to see. So throughout these next games, Montemorris will need to step up, especially against K-State, knowing that the Big 12 is so tight. I think Montemorris knows that his team needs to win that one and continue to rally off that, because with the Big 12 being so tight, you never know where the seeds and the seedings are going to go.
And last time Iowa State played K-State, it was at home. They were able to get the 5-point victory after leading 20 at the half. What does Iowa State have to do this time to avoid a comeback, or K-State to play like they did in that second half, Mary, to just beat them in their house?
I think a simple answer from me would just be being able to get those points beyond the arc and staying strong offensively. Sometimes I've noticed that the Cyclones have a tendency to kind of get low in their performance mid-game and not fight for those rebounds, not have a huge effort. They do have an effort, but it's not as it is in the second half and when they start. So if they're able to maintain that effort and keep that confidence going and not have any moments where they're getting low, then I think they're capable of doing so.
And if you guys could give me a prediction for this game upcoming in Manhattan, what would that be? We'll start with you, Hawn.
For me, I feel like K-State, they're going through a little bit of how Iowa State's going through. They've won some decent games, but they've also dropped some games that they know are going to come bite them come March. So I feel like this game is going to be really tight between these two kind of middle dwellers in the Big 12. I see it not necessarily high scoring, maybe around 70, so I'm going to give it 72 to 70 Iowa State.
72-70 Iowa State. What do you
Very
think?
close.
Very close. Yeah. What do you think, Mary?
I don't have a specific score that I want to predict, but I do think that Iowa State will come out on top. They have momentum coming off of this win from Oklahoma, and K-State isn't necessarily as high of competition as they've struggled with in the past, so I think that they'll be able to pull out the win.
I think K-State's definitely going to try to make this a defensive game. You know, they've been on their toughest streak of this season. They, like 3 games ago, they beat Baylor at Baylor. And then they had KU at home, narrowly escaped, did KU. And then kind of got blown out of the water at West Virginia and Morgantown, as many teams do. So this is going to be a defensive battle. If Iowa State can continue the good three-point shooting, like you said, Mary, I think they've got a good shot in this one. And before we wrap up men's basketball talk, where do you think the Cyclones stand as of right now going into the NCAA tournament? What seed do you think they would draw if the brackets came out today, Hawn?
Coming out today, Iowa State, I feel like would have a pretty low seed. The committee will see the Big 12 as one of the tougher leagues in the nation, so I think they will give it a little bit of an edge there. But with Iowa State losing a lot of close ones, like Cincy at home, splitting Texas even, a loss to TCU, their hope right now isn't great, maybe a 10 seed.
Okay.
But as we're talking about improvement throughout the season, they have 10 games left.
Sure.
Those games are really important. So moving on, I feel like Iowa State winning those, especially their second coming out Baylor, if they were able to win that one, another signature win, they can get a higher seed. But as of right now, a 10, if that.
Yeah. With 6 games remaining, it's tough to tell with some big games remaining, but I think that Kansas win speaks a lot on the road. I think I would probably have them at about a 7 right now if the brackets came out today. What do you think, Mary?
I'm going to go in between you guys there. I agree with both of your guys' points, and I'm going to say maybe an 8th seed heading into the tournament.
Perfect. And now let's talk just briefly about the standings of the Big 12 in men's before we move on to women's basketball. Obviously, it's kind of a fight from 2 to 4 basically right now. You've got KU looking for that baker's dozen, if you will, of straight Big 12 regular season titles, the 13th in a row. And then you've got Baylor at 9-4, West Virginia at 8-5, Iowa State at 7-5, and even TCU there at 6-6. Where do you think at the end of the season does this all shape out? Who are your 2, 3, and 4 spots in the Big 12 standings at the end of it all, Hawn?
Yeah, I like how you listed 2 to start. Kansas isn't moving.
No,
they are not moving from number 1 spot. Even though they have Baylor, I think, coming up this weekend, regardless of win or loss, Kansas isn't moving. I do put Baylor second in the Big 12. They have a really strong front court.
Yeah.
Jonathan Motley has an incredible season. I think he got a little gypped for preseason Big 12, but hopefully at the end of the year he can get his acknowledgement. But after that, I think West Virginia definitely takes the 3rd spot. Their bulldog defense, getting all the turnovers that it can really shuts down a lot of things that Iowa State likes to do, and even other Big 12 teams like Kansas, Baylor. After that, TCU, Iowa State, K-State, it's going to be a battle, and I really don't know how it's going to shape up.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it basically stays the way it does right now. I think Iowa State could be able to potentially... They kind of control their own destiny right now with the way the schedule stands. They've got some big games upcoming, and they've got a lot of winnable games. And playing in the Big 12, that's a very tough thing to do. If you can win the games you're supposed to, and add in maybe one game you're not supposed to, you could put yourself in the place of maybe that 3 slot. I don't think they can get really any higher than that, even though they do play West Virginia and Baylor one more time. I think it stands the way it stands right now. Baylor, West Virginia, and then Iowa State. What do you think, Mary?
I think the top 3 will stay consistent, as you guys said, but I think the battle will really be between Iowa State and TCU. And if Iowa State is able to continue some type of momentum and get a good end of the season going, that will be them at the 4th spot. But if not, I think TCU can sneak in there.
All right. Now let's transition over into some Iowa State women's basketball now. We're going to switch over to another team who's trying to put in a good push towards the end of their season. So, obviously, they had that big win against number 22 West Virginia on the road in Morgantown. Huge Big 12 victory, a big resume booster. We're not able to basically do the carbon copy of that this last weekend at number 25 K-State. And it really went wrong with a couple of key things. I'll let you guys give your input before I give up mine. What do you think went wrong for this team in this game, Mary?
I think a couple big things. One being that a lot of their offense came from one or two players, that being Emily Durr and Shauna Johnson. And I think they need a more consistent effort amongst the lineup in their offensive game. But one big thing that they did struggle with was foul trouble.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
you had, who was it that fouled out? It was
Jada Buckley that fouled out.
Jada Buckley that fouled out, and then you had Shauna Johnson and Bridget Carlton with 4 fouls in foul trouble for the second half of that game. And that doesn't help you because they're playing with a lot of hesitation. And then that's where obviously things can go downhill. So those two were their biggest problems there.
Yeah, it was really a tale of two halves. Foul trouble played a huge part in that. I think that Iowa State, they're a good team, but they cannot be good if two of their 3 best players are in foul trouble. And the fact of the matter was, 3 of their 3 best players in this game were in foul trouble, with Jada Buckley, Shauna Johnson, and Bridget Carlton. And when you can hold Shauna Johnson, you hold Jada Buckley to 2 points with foul trouble. You hold Bridget Carlton to 8 points, who's been on a tear recently. That's a very good defensive assignment by K-State. Shauna Johnson was able to pick up about 17 points, if I'm not mistaken. He has 17 points, but again, in very limited time. You're not going to win any games if a team can do that against you. So that really was a detriment to Iowa State's chances at getting back-to-back huge wins. What do you think cost the Cyclones here, in addition to maybe the foul trouble, Hawn?
Yeah, foul trouble definitely hurt them, but also when a team like K-State can make around half their shots, I think they shot 48% from the field. It's going to be a really hard game to win, home or away.
Yeah.
But the thing was, with this Iowa State game, I thought they played it the right way. Iowa State, in terms of game flow, they were right there with them until maybe towards the end of the third.
Yeah.
But looking at that, they were aggressive on the boards. They only out-rebounded by, I think, 5, maybe 4.
Not even 3, yeah.
3. Being out-rebounded by 3 rebounds isn't a loss, really.
No.
Especially against a team that's ranked in the top 25, who is bigger. Carlson, she's not the tallest on the team, although she gets her fair share of rebounds. It's not a big team. So being out-rebounded by 3 isn't necessarily a loss for Iowa State. And also they hit double-digit three-pointers. So in terms of how Iowa State wanted to play their game, I think they did it right. But like you guys said, foul troubles from Carlson and Johnson, and also K-State being able to hit around half their shots, it really told the story of the game.
Yeah, and one bright spot in addition to those, Hawn, was really Emily Durr, who has taken a bigger role. She stepped into the starting lineup recently and added a new offensive threat to Iowa State's starting 5. How do you think she has performed in her time in the starting 5?
I think that she has completely made the best of what she is capable of doing now in the starting lineup. She has really excelled her game in her 3-point offensive game, and she always had that, but she really took it a step further and made herself known in the starting lineup, and that she wants to stay there. And with her recording 20 points against Kansas State in a loss, that just shows that she is fighting for that spot.
Yeah, it's a little inflated because she was basically the only one left out there after the 3 were in foul trouble, had to shoot 20 shots, but definitely has been a huge part to that offense. And now moving on into the next game we have coming up for Iowa State women's basketball. It's tomorrow. You can hear it on KURE 88.5. I'll be on the call. Plug. But regardless, they will be playing Texas Tech, who they lost to earlier in the year, which is looking like a pretty rough loss, 75-66. But a key to that game was free throws. Texas Tech, at that point in the season, a 65% free throw shooting team approximately. They only missed 1, and they shot 26, versus Iowa State, who only shot 8, and they were a 97% team free throw shooting going into that game. So how does Iowa State go against Texas Tech's scheme for them getting at the line and for Iowa State not getting at the line in this game?
Yeah, you want to talk about a rough loss. The Raiders were 1-9 since that game, so it really was for Iowa State a little demoralizing. But as you're talking about, for Iowa State to kind of combat the whole at the line troubles, both for them and for Texas Tech, they just need to be a little bit more aggressive on the boards, not allow for the second chance points that subsequently allows for free throw moves to the free throw line. But other than that, they need a consistent scorer, whether it be Jada coming back from a little bit of a slump that she's been in. And like you guys said, Emily Durr, she has the ability to get to the line as well as shoot from beyond the arc. So with the combination of that and just kind of being smart on defense, Iowa State should come away with this one.
And who do you think will have to be the MVP of this game for Iowa State to come out with the victory, Mary?
I think that it has to go beyond just one MVP. Emily Durr has to keep up her game and keep up this hot streak, especially heading into kind of the rare end of the season where it's most important. I think when the Cyclones have Jada Buckley at the top of her game, they're really unstoppable. And then Shauna Johnson doing what she does defensively with rebounds. So if all three of those, and then again Bridget Carlton, it's really hard for me to pick one because they all have such so many factors to their game that really put the Cyclones over, but I think everyone needs to really step in there, and Shauna Johnson, Jada Buckley cannot be shy, and she has to make a presence.
Yeah. It's quite a cop-out. Chose 4 of the starting 5. No, I'm giving you a hard time. Hawn, if you could give who has to be a player to watch in this upcoming game, who would it be?
Yeah, I'm going to go along with Mary and have to say Sienna Johnson. Just Sienna Johnson.
Shauna Johnson,
yeah. Sorry. With the way her game has developed, Mary talked about it defensively. She can be a monster on the rebounds at the guard spot, and not only that, she has the unique ability to take over in certain aspects of the game. With Durr and Carlton being the primary scorers of this team at this point, I think Sienna Johnson just has the ability to kind of roam around, hit her threes when she has the chance, and just be more than just a scorer. Really the flex utility player for Iowa State.
Yeah, Shauna can definitely be a game changer. If I were to give it to
pick one.
One player, I'm going to go with Heather Bovey. I'm going to listen to Heather Bovey needs to have a good game. Coming off the bench now, she needs to be that energy, be someone who can be a good defender down low in the post, and make sure that she can still compete on the offensive end in addition to that. Now we're going to go into another sport, touch on gymnastics before we close on the evening. Gymnastics, 8-3 overall. They've got a meet coming up this Friday, currently ranked 25th in the nation, coming off a decent performance on the road in Columbia, Missouri, where they faced off against some good competition. Number 13, Missouri, number 14, Georgetown, and Lindenwood. They placed second in that quad meet. And Iowa State, they competed well, but I'll leave this question up to you. Where do you think they excelled most in this quad meet last Friday, Mary?
Last Friday, they had a couple outstanding performances from a couple girls. They've always kind of struggled on the bars, on the uneven bars and vault, but I think having a girl like Haley Young do what she's doing in the all-around, she's breaking records night after night. That's really setting the tone. Coach Jay Ronay said that the focus was for the team to focus on themselves and only themselves and not focus on, when you're playing 3 other teams, it's easy to kind of lose your mind and get lost in what they're doing, but they did a good job of focusing on their game. And when you have a girl like Haley Young doing what she does in the all-arounds and in her floor routines, it's hard not to have the other girls feed off of her.
Yeah, Young, 39.325 in the all-around in that quad meet. She has been a stable point for the Iowa State gymnastics team the entire season and will look to continue that, like I said, upcoming this Friday, as there will be a tri-meet in Hilton Coliseum against Gustavus Adolphus and Illinois State. What does Iowa State need to do in order to get another team victory and compete on that high level they've been competing on, Mary?
Yeah, they have had a pretty good past 4 or 5 or 6 games, but they have lost a couple. And though they have faced some really good competition, it has a lot to do with their finishes. They have to stick those landings, and they're struggling to do that. So if they're able to focus on that aspect of their game, and when they do, and they make that a key to victory, and they set the tone for that specific thing throughout practice, throughout the week, they usually get it done. So if they can go ahead and finish their stance, have good stances, then I think that'll set them over. And then they'll be back in Hilton Coliseum, and that team really responds to Hilton Magic. They're 5-1 at home this season, so them being at home really, says a lot.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, their only loss team competition-wise is only to the number 1 ranked team in the nation in Oklahoma. So that does say a lot of how they do compete at home. And I agree, this team really hasn't been formed to concentrate on stuck landings. That's not really Iowa State's mantra as a gymnastics squad. But when Jay Ronayne comes out and talks about focus, that's what he's talking about. He wants that focus to go from the start of the routine all the way to the end of the routine. And the most difficult part of a routine, sticking that landing. They've been very solid throughout. They've seen different highs and different lows. Last week in the quad meet, you saw vault being probably the best thing that the Cyclones brought to the table, which previously in the year had been the worst thing that they were bringing to the table. We've seen the same thing with uneven bars a couple weeks ago. It was the worst thing, ended up being the best thing that week. So if Iowa State can tie it all together, hopefully Gustavus Adolphus and Illinois State come to compete well, because when all the competitors are at a high level, you see higher scores. Hopefully we see that this Friday, and hopefully Iowa State competes very well. Now we're going to close the show with just some other headlines, read off what else is going on in Iowa State athletics for you. D3 Cyclone hockey won the MACHA championship, defeated Marquette in the championship game 3-0. Wrestling had a rough week, rough weekend, lost to both Pitt and West Virginia on the road. They will be at home against Minnesota this Sunday. Make sure to catch that action. Women golf currently competing in the Puerto Rico Classic, just wrapped up on Tuesday. Final scores yet to come. Softball travels to Nashville this weekend. We've got tennis traveling to St. Augustine, and going to Texas is the track and field squad. They will be competing on the road as well. So all kinds of Cyclone athletics for you to check out this weekend.
Busy week.
Busy week, as always, in Cyclone athletics. That's all we've got time for here on Cyclone InCYders. For Hawn Wong and Mary Rominger, I'm Taylor Mankle.